All right, everybody, welcome in. Monday, November 24th, coming up at 7 o'clock. Super thankful for two people. Number one, Jay Pearson, thank you so much for joining us today. We're going to break down the James Franklin saga. And also shout out to my guy, Brett Smith, for putting this together. This episode is brought to you by Whitley's Peanut. Use code SUNSFALL for 10% off at whitleyspeanut.com. You can get them at Lane Stadium. But Jay Pearson, first time on the podcast. He is an alum from the class of 1987. He earned a degree in agricultural and applied economics and is a former Corps of Cadets member. He was commissioned as a second lieutenant in the Virginia Army National Guard and served 9 years. He went on to found a company called Carry On Trailer and has seen great success in other ventures as well. Many of you may be familiar with Jay from his current sitting as a Board of Visitors member. He was appointed in July of 2024, or by tracking some of his flights across the country the last few weeks. First and foremost, Jay, a lot of restless nights, a lot of flying around the country. How are you doing, and how's everything going?
Doing great. Glad to get a little rest. Let me tell you, that was some tough couple weeks there.
Well, I do want to say thank you so much for how you represent our school, and thank you for all you have done for the university. We're going to get started with some Hokie haikus here that we had submitted from our listeners. The first one comes from Sir Joey. We track his flights. Pearson leads us to new heights. Onward to victory. That one is great. And then we also have C. Jackson. Hokies rise anew. Franklin's fire ignites the field. Glory roars once more. So, Jay, I thought a good place to start here would be just tell me a little bit about what sparked your interest in getting involved in the capacity that you are on the Board of Visitors and just kind of your background with Virginia Tech in general.
Sure. So one thing I've learned on being the Board of Visitors is as a donor, they listen to you. And when you're on the Board of Visitors, they listen and do. So one of my goals to become on the board is I worked with Governor Youngkin to help him get elected, even though I'm from out of state, but I want to do whatever I could do to help, was to get on the Board of Visitors because I knew the president is coming available soon. And I also knew, when I say the job, his contract's coming up. And I also knew that I wanted to have a voice on the next commandant that was coming up. I served 9 years as chairman of the Corps Alumni Board. And through that process, I worked with General Fullhart with the Corps as the commandant. We built the 2 Pearson Halls. We did the entire Upper Quad together, raised that money for the Corps to get that. I mean, it's number one in the country, that Upper Quad area. If you compare to Texas A&M and all the rest of the senior military schools, we knocked the ball out of the park there. So very proud of that accomplishment. And then to be able to pick the next commandant with a search committee, but at least have a voice. And then I wanted, like I say, a voice for the presidency. Now, I didn't have any idea on this athletic thing. I'm on the Board of Visitors. We get a new rector. He has Witt come and tell us that, we've underfunded this thing for a long time, and that winning costs money and not putting money in costs money because we'll keep getting further behind. Excuse me. So Rector Rokovich just looked at me and Ryan McCarthy and says, you are going to get the money and figure this thing out. So we spent many a time, me and Ryan McCarthy, with Witt, with Brandon, his CFO, which is really very helpful because he came from Clemson. And so he knows what they did. So just to go back in history, in 2010, we won the ACC championship. Our budget and Clemson budget was about the same, but we stayed the same 2011 on, and they rose. And you saw how they got 2 natties and all kinds of other things they've won, right? I mean, I don't know how many AC championships they've won, and we haven't won since. So we had to get back to that. So our budget is in the top 3 with Florida State. Them, we don't know what mine is. We have a guess, but we're right there with all those guys now. And then Rector Rokovich says, okay, you will be on this search committee. I'm like, okay. So away we go. And, it just was awesome to be a part of that.
That was one of the questions that we got from the Sons of Saturday group chat. I believe Rich Luttenberger or Paul Patera asked this question. Obviously, what was your involvement or your visibility into Virginia Tech athletics when you were in school and then following your graduation? And it sounds like you were voluntold that we had a problem, and thank goodness you took the reins there. But what is your kind of familiarity with Virginia Tech athletics, and ultimately what led you to say, yes, I'm willing to take this on and take us into the future?
Well, back in the day when I was a student, I would come across a drill field because we were on upper quad and all my classes were in lower quad, what they call the ag quad. And I'm coming across a drill field all the time. And there goes Bruce Smith by me in a big old fur coat. I saw him later and I said, man, that was a big fur coat. And he said, yeah, but I was warm. Anybody knows Blacksburg, that wind comes across there pretty strong. But that was I've loved athletics ever since, and the Michael Vick era basically rebuilt Lane Stadium. If anybody looks at all the luxury suites and all that stuff, that was done right after the Michael Vick era, and we need to get back to that, right? So as I climbed up in the donor ranks and those kind of things, I just kept getting sick of losing. I gave a significant amount of money to athletics and was able to get a suite, and you're sitting over there talking to other folks, and it's just everybody's so tired of losing. You got so used to winning 10 games, and now we'd be happy to win 7, 8, or 9 games. But to hear Whit at the BOV meeting discuss all the things, how far we're going to be behind, there's several things. One is if we don't get the viewership, we're $30 million short compared to a Florida State or Clemson, just in the ACC with this new settlement they did. North Carolina's got a huge check they'll write to get into Big Ten, for example. So there's all these moving parts here, but the number one thing is if we can get eyeballs, we'll get another $30 million ish, coming into Tech. That's game changing. But if we stay where we are, we won't. The other thing is we all know there's going to be 2 super conferences. Now, whether it be 20 teams each or 24 teams each, but let's just say 20. We know that's a minimum. That means there's 8 seats at a table. Well, we're not AAU members, so we don't know if we're going to get into that Big Ten side. So really it's the SEC side. And we believe the SEC has looked at us and say, hey, Clemson, they've got they got South Carolina. Hey, Florida State, they got Florida. But they don't have North Carolina or Virginia or Maryland. They don't have those 3 states at all, and we represent that. So we've got to show everybody, not just the SEC, but everybody, that we're all in again, that we're back.
I'm glad you mentioned the AAU recognition. For those of you listening and are not familiar, to enter the Big Ten, you do need that AAU recognition. And I will say that Tim Sands has done a job of getting us close to that accreditation. But as of right now, that is not something that Virginia Tech has. When I look back at these, I've been doing this podcast since 2019, and I've always thought that the most frustrating part was going back to when Justin Fuente was here, the old Coach Beamer days, and even going into the Coach Pry days. Like, Virginia Tech's expectation is we should beat Pitt, Wake Forest, UVA, Syracuse every single year. And it's great that we've been able to do that for so long, but from a funding perspective, if you remove the logos, if you remove the history and you remove everything else, Virginia Tech was not funded appropriately to accomplish those goals. And as we moved into this new NIL era, when it became so much about your funding is your lifeblood and where you're going to exist, that was so important. So back to Whit's proposal in the summer about the 229 over 4 years, it's funny. Every time I talk to a national person, they're shocked when they hear that number. They're like, I can't believe you have this type of investment that's coming down and how important that is. But I have to give Whit a lot of credit for publicly saying, hey guys, this is where we are. This is what the delta is. And if we need to make a decision on if we want to be a participant or we want to be a leader. So I guess what was the reaction of the school and what was the reaction of the board when that was presented so bluntly, and what got everybody to the point of like, okay, this is something that has to be taken care of and it needs to be taken care of right now?
Well, we got to go back in time. During Beamer's, during Beamer's time, he was able to win with just a shoestring budget. So everybody thought, hey, we're great. We don't have to spend all that money. Academia did their thing, and athletics had to develop it on their own. And then, Coach got a little sick there at the end there. And then we brought in Fuente, as you said. And he just wasn't a cultural fit. I think he was a good X and O and all that kind of thing, but he just wasn't a Hokie. I can see Brent Pry at PK sometimes hugging 2 kids, getting a picture with a piece of pizza in his mouth. That is a cultural fit, but I'm not sure Brent was ready for, the head coaching role. It just didn't seem that way, but whatever. But a great cultural fit. We believe right now we've got both of those. We think that Franklin is not only a cultural fit. Heck, he was in lot 1 way after the Miami game and saw some fans and got a picture taken. That's a cultural fit, right? But you got to have the X and O side, and you just look at his record. It's just absolutely great. The other thing is he got this chip on his shoulder of what Penn State he believes, and I agree too. I think they just reacted way, way too quick. But hey, that was great for us, right? So when you go back, what happened was Rector John Rakovich said, "Hey, enough's enough. Whit, I need you to come present to the board." Now, I want to tell you that Whit has been presenting to the board and to the president saying, "Hey, I need money over here. I need money over here. We're losing this race." But I don't think we had the whole team, the whole BOV ready to hear it, I guess. So Governor Youngkin, to his credit, kind of changed the board makeup. And Rector Rakovich said, "Hey, I want to hear from you, Whit, again." And I can tell you, Whit was upset saying, "Daggone, I've been through this, and nothing happens." I said, "Whit, it's a different day. Give me a chance. Give Ryan McCarthy a chance. We're going to get this done." And he didn't believe it till the minute we voted on it. Then he believed it.
And I got to tell you, it's funny because it's almost like people have selective hearing. Like when this got done, it's like, well, why did we wait till now to have this conversation? No, this is a conversation that has been had multiple times. And that's why this Board of Visitors group is so important, because it really does craft the future of Virginia Tech. And it seems like one of the most important moments in the history of the school.
Yeah, and I just want to add, too, that I never forget, I was sitting in Fuente's office, me and my wife, Renee, and we were sitting there learning that our staff numbers versus what North Carolina had. Forget about Florida State and Clemson. We weren't even competitive in the mid group of the ACC. No. And I realized then that's when we started the group front court. Sorry, that's basketball. I'm sorry. Team first.
Team first.
Dr. Danny White will kill me. Team first was to raise enough money to get the staff level up. And that was Fuente's, kudos for him on that.
It's one of the biggest podcasts that we ever did, and I think it legitimized us as a platform, is we brought John Yetzi on when he was still a member of that team. And he broke it down. He said, "Hey, guys, I'm just telling you, Wake Forest has more recruiting staff than Virginia Tech has. I'm just telling you, this group has a better weight room than we have." And when we were going into renovations, I don't want to get too far into this, but essentially he said when we were proposing renovations, we would come with the renovations, and whoever would say, "You know what, can you come back with a more comparable example of something along the lines with Duke or along the lines with Pittsburgh?" And in your head, you're like, wait a second. So us as a fan base, our expectation is to compete to win ACC championships, but we're drawing the line at we're going to be on par with some of these other schools. And that is why you've seen that incredible separation between the Clemsons and, to a lesser degree, Florida State. They've thrown money at the problem. They just haven't gotten the right people in the seats. And, I think getting everybody to sing from the same hymnal is so important. Now, going into this coaching search, the 8-person search committee is put together. Jay Pearson, Bruce Arians, Bridget Ryan Berman, Lynn Dowdy, Bud Foster, Brad Hobbs, Ryan McCarthy, and Eddie Royal. When this group was constructed, what went into putting this group of people together? And what was that first meeting? I'm sure you all know each other, but what was that first meeting of we're in this together and we have to solve this problem together like?
Well, first of all, what the goal was to have 3 football folks, 3 CEOs, and the rector made sure that me and Ryan, since we're the ones that dug up the money and made sure, because, we were sitting down with Whit constantly and Brandon constantly coming up with, if you remember in that presentation, he came up with something like 53, 54 million. We cut a few things out. We added a few things and come up with 47.1. So, all right, we got the money now. So everybody on that committee was really excited. And we President Sands thought that if you put CEOs with football folks, it would be a good mix. And then you had the 2 BOVs members who got the money and got it done. So we added the teeth, the power, whatever you want to say, representing of the board to make it happen. And Whit was every bit a part of it. It's just that when you spend $200 million plus, the BOV just wanted to be represented in this thing.
I'm glad you said that. And I want to touch on 2 points, and they go together. The first point is, I think it's fascinating that this group of people was put together to accomplish this goal and how well thought out the group was. I think, speaking for any athletic department, the two words that jumped out were relentless and prepared. And I think when we talk about Jimmy Sexton and when we talk about some of the other power players that are involved, let's just call it what it is. Jimmy Sexton runs circles around career academics. He just consistently does that every single time he's in this position. So to have the knowledge of the university and to have the understanding of what Virginia Tech has looked like from 2013 to today with Whit Babcock, say what you will about his tenure, but to have that context and that information coupled with the very successful CEOs and the people that understand the football program dating back to when it was special, like, can you just speak a little bit to Whit's involvement? Because I think there are a lot of people who are just like, well, the athletic department had nothing to do with this. I think actually it was a perfect marriage between these two Titans to make it happen.
Absolutely. So let me tell you about Whit. You know, he was really down in the dumps. Think about it. His second coach didn't make it, right? The whole fan base is against the whole program, against everything. You know, everybody wanted everybody's heads, right? And he could have, when this committee was formed, he could have thrown the keys out and said, guys, help yourself. You know, I'm trying to hold together myself, much less anything else. But he didn't do that. He handled it with total professionalism. He said, here's how we should break this thing down. I'll handle the agents. I will handle anything else on that end, contracts, those kind of stuff. You guys, we'll get the coaches in front of you. You guys ask the tough questions, and we'll just keep whittling it down till we get a small group. One of the things that he did, and I think was tremendous wisdom, was saying with 8 folks, we probably ought to split the duties a little bit here. And he said, look, we'll take a smaller group on this first round, and another group will do some of the other ones. He was really, really worried about leaks. And number 2 was the fact that a lot of these coaches had jobs. And you can imagine if it got out, it caused a lot of trouble. Luckily, he asked that me and Ryan, Brad Hobbs, and Bud Foster and himself do the James Franklin visit. Because keep in mind, we met before James Franklin had been fired yet. But when he was fired, we pivoted 180 right then. And so we basically did those 2 groups. So they were dealing with some of the other schools with employed coaches. And this other group, we kind of broke off and went and saw Franklin down in Georgia.
So I don't mean to take another victory lap here, but I'm going to do it. The minute that James Franklin was let go, yes, I was like, you know what? That would be a pipe dream. I don't see any universe that could even possibly come true. But if you could tell me we could hire anybody tomorrow, it is James Franklin, given his resume, given how he recruited the area and everything else. Like, I am over the moon with that decision making. And it was surprising to see. I don't think a lot of Virginia Tech fans, but you know, there were some people who were like, you know, he had just gotten let go and everything else. So I want to know, from the minute he gets fired at Penn State, what is that group chat, that email thread, like what happens from there, and when is first contact made with James Franklin?
I apologize. I can't remember the exact dates, but I can tell you this. He got fired and Bud Foster called him. Mm-hmm. And they talked, and basically Bud said, well, you know, hey, coach, all that kind of stuff. And basically he said, we got a job down here that's wide open. And then he told us as a group of 8 about the chance. Hey, look, he's interested. And so we pivoted immediately, and, you know, that small group there. And then we requested a meeting very quickly. In fact, he told me later, he said, probably should have waited a little bit on that meeting, because he goes, I was hurt.
Yeah.
He shocked and hurt more than you can ever imagine. He poured his heart and soul in that place, and he had a bad day at the office a couple of times. The next thing you know, he's canned. Now, what I understand is, you know, him and the AD didn't hire him. And what I'm understanding in this coach's world, you know, the AD likes his guy or his, you know, person in the job. And that wasn't the case there. I think he survived 2 ADs up there in Penn State. So I think there was a little bit of that. And then, you know, the fan base was tired of winning. You know, they came, was it double overtime against Oregon? I think that set the tone there. Mm-hmm. But it was great for us because, you know, we smelled an opportunity there. I say, look, I was already in Georgia down at Lake Oconee at the Ritz-Carlton on an offsite. I said, I can be over there. It's less than 30 minutes away, you know. And then Brad Hobbs got on his plane, and he grabbed everybody and went different directions. So to throw everybody off. And then we went to Coach's house and sit down with him. And that's where the magic happened. That's where him and Coach Bud Foster really, really connected. Brad, of course, Ryan McCarthy asked a couple tough questions. And, I brought a file with me. And in that file was the resolution. And it also was Invest to Win sheets, what do you call it? The PowerPoint that I showed where, we had the 47.1 and certain buckets, just in case he asked me, hey, how much money did you put aside for staff and salary? I had it right there. But I opened it up, and the only thing I really showed him was the resolution that Ryan and I put together, and it was voted on the board unanimously for the money. So I apologize. There was one vote no. I apologize. Yeah, it was one vote no on that. We voted to vote on his contract unanimously. Sorry about that.
Correct.
So he did see that. I did show him real quick the PowerPoint a little bit and show him we had the buckets laid out. And that really impressed him. But I didn't know till later how much it did impress him, that we had a plan, that we weren't going in, hey, coach, here's the keys and here's the checkbook. Help yourself. And that, what I understand, he said many times to me, he has learned so much how good we were prepared and how bad these other schools that called him were not prepared.
Again, it comes back down to the fact that I think having something other than we're going to send some academics down there to figure it out. And I mean that from the school and everybody. I'm not referring to Witt as an academic. I'm just saying in a lot of situations, it's our football program is bad. We believe you can fix it. Here's a bunch of money and good luck. So, credit to you all for being prepared. And again, I think you're going to see a lot of coaching committees that are formed in this manner. I want to touch on kind of how raw this whole situation was, because I often make this comparison with athletes after bad games or coaches after poor performances. I can't imagine what he was feeling like to pour himself into Penn State for as long as he poured himself into it. And I think some misremembering goes on. Like, I'm from the Northeast, I'm from New Jersey. And I remember in high school, a couple of friends of mine and I were being recruited to Penn State, and Penn State, it's very delicate to compare these two types of situations, but the awful occurrence that happened at Penn State was synonymous with the university in the way that the awful event that happened at Virginia Tech was synonymous with the university. Like, you could not think of Penn State without thinking about the awful things that went on there. And they were in an awful, awful spot. And for him to take that job and elevate Penn State back to winning 10 games a year was absolutely tremendous, not to mention what he did at Vanderbilt, winning at Vanderbilt before Vanderbilt was cool. So did you get the sense in your first couple conversations with him that it was raw? It sounds like he was very transparent about, like, look, this happened. And was that ever a reason that you had pause, or you were a little bit like, is this guy ready to jump into a new coaching role?
Well, as a CEO myself, and I always carry a pen with me for a deal. We were ready to sign that night if he would have, Yep. And he told me later on a Saturday that, hey, Jay, y'all put some tremendous pressure on me. My daughter is still dealing with this. She got accepted to Penn State. She went to high school there. All her friends are going to Penn State. She's tore up. My wife has all her friends there. We have personal friends, have nothing to do with football there. And all of a sudden, in one swoop, it's gone. So we're just tore up about it. And we haven't had really any time to breathe. And then here's Virginia Tech coming in. And he told me this later. James said, Jay, I just needed some time. And of course, on the other side, we don't have time, right? We've got high school signing day, first week in December. We got the portal signing day. Was that the second week in January, I believe?
You got other schools who are going to want James Franklin too?
And we don't, of course, and we don't have time. So you've got them needing time to just take it all in, and our side saying the quicker we get this done, the more kids are going to come to Virginia Tech.
Yep.
That's how so luckily, Bud Foster saying, slow down. You got me and Ryan McCarthy go, let's go. As he said, relentless, So it was a great counterbalance.
As it is.
Don't forget, you got Witt dealing with Jimmy. All the time, all the time dealing with Jimmy.
As it is with any, I tell people all the time, and people are like, oh man, did they argue? Look, Pat and I yell at each other all the time. I get yelled at by clients all the time. I get yelled at by my manager, not as much, but sometimes. So were there any points where it did become contentious? Did we have any boiler room moments where one group is on one side? And obviously you had a unified front and got the job done, but were there some points where, it had to take a lot of trust in Coach Foster, and he's earned that trust to be willing to say, you know what, I trust him on this. Like, we'll give him as much time, because on Twitter, and I'm sure you may not spend a lot of time there, Jay, I don't suggest it, but there were a lot of people who were like, if this deal isn't done by Monday, it's not going to happen. Or if this is not done by Tuesday, it's not going to happen. So what was the real situation with, we need you to get this done as quickly as possible, and we're not setting a date on it, but please hurry up?
Well, okay. So I apologize. Bud was constantly talking to Coach more than every day, and tell him what a great place we are, where we can get back to a national championship. We have the ability, and the ACC is an easier path than having to go through the Alabamas and, the Big Ten having to go through the Ohio States, right? So all these things are attractive. We told him we put 57,000 fans against Wofford. We're 0-3, and the new, interim coach. I mean, that's impressive to do that. 1:00 game. I mean, my God. So Frank James was taking in all those kind of things. In the meantime, these schools are calling without a plan. And here we have the plan. How many dollars you got for this? We throw it to them. How many dollars you got for this? We throw it to them. We had the plan. And it kept saying, I'm getting in a better place. I'm getting in a better place. So to tell you this is what happened. So, you got Bud talking to Coach every day and telling us he still needs some time, that kind of thing, right? Then you got Ryan and I saying, let's go, let's go. But Ryan and I, Ryan and I talked a little bit, and Ryan says, Jay, Fumi Franklin shook everyone's hands as we left their house in Oconee, Georgia, except for you. She hugged you. I didn't even notice it. I got a hug, right? I didn't pay any attention. Nobody else did. Mm-hmm. And I go, wow, okay, well, I know what to do then. Ryan, if you don't mind, why don't you bird dog with the lawyers? And I will work with James, texting back and forth, talk to him about, the deal and that kind of stuff. And Bud will talk the coach stuff. And that's how we divvied it, each other's, job description, I guess you'd call it.
Man, when you were putting together the business plan and what to put in your portfolio, Brett Smith asked this one. He said, how similar was that to building a business plan, especially with NIL budgets, revenue share? Like you said, you were ready for every single question. And what I loved is I heard that he came back with some notes in the margins and everything else. Were there any questions you all weren't prepared for? Or, was there anything that he was surprised that you presented that he didn't ask about?
So, yes, if you read some of the interviews, Ryan McCarthy noticed that he had printed off the entire presentation that Witt did to the Board of Visitors because it's public. And he had all kinds of notes. And he wrote those things down, and we kind of covered that stuff. The good news was he had what I had with me, except for the resolution showing that, hey, we did vote on it. It did happen. So I was amazed at his detail. I was amazed that, this wasn't a sloppy game where, I want to go to Tech kind of thing. No, this is like, let me check this T. Is this the I dotted? Is this T crossed? He was very, very thorough. And these questions were all the time questions. So at the end of that Georgia meeting, I asked him, I was the last question I asked, Coach, any questions for us? He goes, I want to do more with the core if I was the head coach. Well, me, my heart just
perfect question.
Yeah. It's not, I think he knew when I asked, he came back with something that I would love. But if you noticed at his press conference last Wednesday, we had 1,000+ core members there because I called the general up and said, you got to get this done, But one thing, just keep going with that. So we left Oconee, and, another week went by, and Coach says, man, I want to drive around. And I found out from Bud that he was going to drive down. And I said, wait, Bud, I got to fix this. So I called Coach. Coach did take my call. And I said, I hear you're going to drive down. Why are you doing that? Well, and I said, no, I'll send a plane to go get you. My number's blocked. My tail number's blocked. Well, hang with me on that. So I set the plane up, and then he's texting me at 11 o'clock at night saying, hey, I'll take the flight, and can my wife come? Well, this is a coup right there because he was just going to drive down by himself. His wife couldn't miss that much time. And I'm like, wow. So I'm calling my pilots at 11 o'clock, begging them to take this flight. So sure enough, they said, yes, sir, Jay, we'll do it. Got up there, got them, got both of them down. We landed in Pulaski, not Blacksburg. That's what threw, some folks off.
Yeah.
And I drove my car right up against my plane. He comes off the steps and hops right in the car. Nobody saw it. We drove all around campus. We went to my house and picked up Bud, drove all around campus, went back ways, went over by Church Street, back from the back roads. He got to see the entire stadium up on. We all of it. I had to show him the Pearson Halls. Just had to do that.
Of course.
And then actually, Fumi wanted to check out a house. We went over and checked the house out, drove around it, and then came back to my house in Blacksburg, had lunch, and then we had some more discussions. He was wondering what was up with Whit. Good question. I told him and the president are going to sit talk in June. That they do that every year. It's the end of the physical year, and so they were going to talk again then. But nothing was going to happen to Whit between now and then anyway. So everything is good. It was a good question, right? And we took it back to the airport, and away we went. All right. So then we're getting tired of the lawyers spinning around, especially Ryan. Ryan says, I'm putting a deadline on this thing. I want to know Friday at 5 o'clock, we're done. We got to move on to another coach. So Ryan calls me last Friday morning. He says, Jay, the lawyers are doing nothing. There's nothing going on. All day Thursday, nothing. Here it is Friday morning. It doesn't like anything that's going on. I said, okay, I know what I got to do. So I called my wife and said, honey, I'm not coming home from my plant in Tennessee. I think I need to go up to go see the coach. And she says, you better get your butt up there and make this deal happen. I said, yes, ma'am. I said, honey, people do business with people, and I just need to get in front of him one more time. Mm-hmm. And I called Bud up. I said, Bud, you got a clear schedule. I'm coming to get you around 5 o'clock. He said, sure. So called coach to make sure it was okay. And James goes, Jay, my wife has to pick up our kid from school, and, she's got friends and all that kind of stuff. How about 7 o'clock instead of 5? And he goes, I think it's a great idea. We're getting together.
No, moving on. Yeah. If he said midnight, I guess you're going at midnight, right?
Yes, I would. And then I started getting some texts from my son-in-law that's telling me VT Scoop guys are tracking me. When I went up to Detroit on some business, they were like, oh, Jay's on the move.
I was tracking you too. I was watching where you were going. Yeah.
So my tail number's blocked, but if you know how to get through the FAA website, you can find it. Prior to the Obama administration, you blocked it, it was over. But after the Obama administration, he said the skies are public, so therefore, if you want to get to it, you can. Elon Musk sued. He lost. You can track Elon Musk. Yep. So then I was going to flip airplanes. I have another airplane in my hangar that I leased a guy to. It's exactly the same plane. It's just a different tail number. I was going to do that. Well, heck, if you were watching where I fly out of Greenville, South Carolina, or Toccoa, Georgia, you would have known it was me. So I just said, the heck with it. We're so close to getting this deal done. It doesn't matter. So yes, you tracked me, but I couldn't go into Happy Valley because Coach is a celebrity.
Yep.
Nobody knows Jay Pearson, but everybody knows Bud Foster all these years, right? So we went to an airport about 40 minutes away, and this is a big thing I wanted to let you know about. So, we went to his coach's house. He fed us spaghetti. He's got both of his daughters there. They have friends. It's just a wonderful family environment. They're putting up Christmas decorations and that kind of stuff. He said, we've never done it before. We always go to a bowl game. I said, way to rub it in, Coach. Then we go downstairs in his man cave, and man, what a fan he is. Yep. Rows and rows of helmets and memorabilia and signatures and pictures of everything you can imagine on a football field. It was just beautiful. And then we went to like a dining room area, and we talked around. And I'll tell you, Coach said, hey, man, what's this up with the Friday at 5? Ooh. Well, the lawyers haven't done anything. We finally had to give them an ultimatum. Yeah. Now, that had nothing to do with you, Coach. It was, them lawyers just quit working. Well, them lawyers work for me. And I'll look into that. I said, thank you, sir. And we went on about talking about, hey, man, Wednesday we want to do this press conference. We were trying to be happy-go-lucky because we could tell he was a little bit perturbed about being pushed, right? And that's kind of, that was kind of our thing we were doing because we really wanted him so bad. And he knew it. And he didn't take advantage of that either. I think if you looked at that contract,
Yep.
that wasn't crazy.
Yep.
But here's that point I was telling you about being at that other airport. So we Ubered there. And it was so funny because Coach and I are talking all that. And I'm thinking, man, we can't talk about this stuff. The driver could record everything we're talking about. I don't think the guy could speak 2 words of English. I think he was from Pakistan or, a Middle East country or something. It was so funny. And the only reason why I noticed, his wife called him. And they were talking about that. Okay.
We got to find that Uber. We got to find that Uber driver.
After we finished our meeting, Coach goes, "Hey, I'll drive you to the airport," because he thought we were at Happy Valley.
Yep.
Said, "I'm sorry, Coach. We'll get an Uber, man. We're about 40 minutes away. So no problem. I'll take you."
Wow.
Yep. And I looked over at Fumi and I said, "Are you okay? Is everything? What are you thinking here?" And she said, "This helped us get over the mountain."
Mm-hmm.
I'm like, "Wow, that's awesome." And then, of course, Coach said, "Monday's my day." He did say that a couple of weeks earlier that, hey, this is the date. It was the Monday before the week of the Miami game is where he was picking. I think he had that in his mind because that's when he could do some recruiting and stuff before, because once he signs, then he has, more restrictions on him, that kind of thing. And so he stuck to that, to his word. He took the whole day Monday now, let me tell you.
I gotta ask, how many trips did you make on this venture? How many flights were back and forth? How many times did you meet before pen was put on paper?
Okay, so we did the Oconee. I was already down there, but I flew home. Then we did the Coach wanted to check out everything. And all those rumors about Fumi looking at houses, no, that only happened the one trip that we flew down. She just wanted to see one house that she had seen on the internet, and that was it. They
didn't spend the entire day looking at 6 different houses? That reporting is inaccurate, or he didn't open a bank account, or
Oh, somebody said she was in Wells Fargo. No.
I heard Atlantic Union Bank is the one that I heard.
Oh, sorry, Atlantic Union. No. All right, so that's number 2, and then number 3 is when Bud and I went up there. So it was just the 3 trips.
So first and foremost, I got to give this plug. My girlfriend is a salesperson over at NetJet. So if you do want to have your flight stop being tracked, we can get you a conversation there to make sure in the next. Hopefully, there is no coaches search coming up soon, but that was a ton of fun.
They can track those if you know the tail number. The good thing about those kind of places, you can switch airplanes, right, and you get different tail numbers.
Right.
But it got to the point then it didn't matter anymore. I think both sides were almost there. I don't know if it was Jimmy. I don't know if it was their lawyers. I don't know if it was Penn State. I know Penn State was negotiating hard on the numbers. We got $9 million. Maybe we asked for 20. I don't know. We left that all to Witt. And that's why we needed Witt, not only his wisdom of doing this for so long, he's really good at it.
Yep.
Okay, the coaches search, didn't work so good. That's, but really the reason why we formed this committee from the BOV level was $200 million. That's why we did it. We want to get more eyes, more checks and balances on this thing. And you got Bruce Arians. I mean, my gosh, he's seen it all, right? Eddie Royal, ACC, he told us a lot of inside information on coaches. Look, you can forget about that guy. There's no way. I've interviewed him. He's so happy you're not going to get him. So you take him off the list kind of thing, right? Then you've got Bud Foster, which this wouldn't probably have happened without him because of his common effect and the coach that happened there. It was just off the chain.
In terms of what Coach Franklin and his family was looking for in his next gig, was there an anecdote that you shared with Coach or you shared with Fumi that really you felt like resonated or was a light bulb moment for him?
Well, Bud did a wonderful job talking about what a great place. He's lived there almost his whole adult life, right? I've been there since 1987, but only back and forth. Maybe I stay there 2 weeks at a time. He's spent his whole adult life there almost, right? So he really told him a lot about the things you do, what's going on, that kind of stuff. James Franklin knew all about the tradition, all that kind of stuff, right? He knew all that. So, and then Fumi, Bud Foster's wife is a real estate agent. So she could talk a lot of that kind of stuff to make them feel better. It just reminded them a lot of where they were. But Virginia Tech, Blacksburg is a wonderful place to raise a family.
Yep.
Now it's a little hard to get in and out of. And, Coach asked about how much private jet time do I get to go recruiting? And if you looked at that budget, we put a lot in there, and he was just double checking to make sure it was still in there. Nobody went and grabbed it out,
Last few I have, and then we'll move to rapid fire. And again, I really appreciate you taking the time. People have been dying to know about this stuff. In terms of blocking out the noise, and number one, I appreciate what you said about Witten. I appreciate what you said about the entire search committee. Is there any part of misconception or surprise to you? Obviously, being under an NDA, you couldn't talk about this, but was there something that was thrown out there where you're just like, man, this is just so ridiculous and not true, or even now when this is over, like a talking point or something that you're seeing that's off base or is completely right?
Well, I'll take the NDA since you brought that up. People say, what are they going to do? Jay leaks, so they're going to take away his checkbook. I heard that comment, and some other ones. No, but I tell you what, if he leaked, we had to cut the committee down. And Witt already knew it up front that there probably would be a leak. So therefore, he kind of divided us up and said, okay, this group is going to take the new coaches. This group's going to take James Franklin. And it was, wisdom and kudos to him to do that. So that was some of the stuff that I'm like, man, these guys are really beating this NDA up. It was the right thing to do to set the tone. But the other thing, it gave us an excuse. So when you would interview me, for example, I could say, hey, man, I'm under NDA, right? And Witt kept pushing us to do that because everybody was calling us saying, can you give me something? Give me something, and say, hey, guys, we're under NDA. We got to keep it. But it was common sense, too. You got people that their jobs and lives could be destroyed if something leaked out the wrong way. So the good news is there was so much junk out there that people knew was crazy, like they were looking at 6 houses, at Atlantic Union Bank. That was so crazy. That was a good leak. Let it go. But don't forget, too, that these daggone, Jimmy Sachs would leak things.
Yeah.
And so would Penn State.
Yep.
Okay. I know that, Witt didn't, right? But those other organizations we can't control, and we know they leaked. So, for example, we didn't have the DocuSign back on Monday, and it was already, ESPN was on it. Now, 5 minutes later, we got the DocuSign. Coach had texted me and said he signed it, but we still hadn't had the ink yet, right? And it was already leaked out. So we knew that went from Jimmy. Jimmy called ESPN and told him.
Is there anything that you learned that you didn't expect in doing this? Or something that stands out?
People do business with people. I believe that my whole life and career, and I think that's what's made me successful in business. And, you can Zoom like we are right now, but, if you and I were sitting there talking, it would be a whole different thing, right? So we just felt like that personal touch added so much to this thing versus, doing the Zoom calls or doing phone calls, that kind of thing. I was so impressed with Coach. He calls me on Sunday before the Monday he signs and say, hey, I want to talk to the governor. I want to talk to President Sands, and I want to talk to Rector John Rakovich. I said, he told this to Bud. I apologize. Coach called me on Sunday, talked about NIL. And I told him, Coach, we'll get the 15 million in NIL, which with the 20 million of rev share minus the other sports would be 15. So that's a $30 million roster. That's what he wanted. And other coaches that we interviewed wanted a $30 million roster. I said, Coach, we'll get you the money. Me and Brad and some other folks had figured out we can get that done. And I had to, just so Coach, sometimes in business, you have to trust. You cannot paper a contract on everything. And the state of Virginia would not allow us to put that in writing. No coach has an NIL contract to write. If it has anything to do with the university, you can't have that, right?
Yep.
But he wanted to talk to all those. Bud calls me up and said, Jay, can you get this done? I said, absolutely, I'll get it done. So I texted Governor Youngkin. He texted me right back, said, absolutely, I'd love to welcome the next new Virginia resident. And I said, great. Okay. Then I called Tim. And Tim and I talked over timing when he could talk to Coach. And then Rakovich was getting ready to get on a plane out of Louisiana. And he said, I'll be on the ground about 2 hours or so. So the governor calls him, and he doesn't pick up. So the governor texted me back, said, I called him. And I said, James, he just called you. He said, I'm sorry. Have him call me again. I said, no. You call him. Here's the number. and I gave Governor Youngkin the number, so he got that done. Then we talked to Tim. He was expecting. I got those numbers crossed, and they made it through. Oh, one more he wanted to talk to is Coach Beamer. And he worded it to me this way, and he said this in a press conference. I want a young man to come to me and ask for my daughters in marriage. I did it to their grandfather. I expect that to happen. I want to go to Coach Beamer and say, hey, can I run your team? And I thought that was so cool. I'm like, wow, that's amazing. So Bud got that done. And he called 3 times and that didn't work, and then called Cheryl and then got a hold of Coach. And then of course John Rakovich hit the ground and called him. We got it all done. Then he says, I need to talk to the governor-elect. I said, Coach, we can't get that done right away. She just won. We need a couple of days to gear that up, And sure enough, I think he talked to her today or tomorrow.
Okay.
But that was amazing what he asked for, how he wanted more of those T's crossed and I's dotted.
Right.
I don't know of any other coaching search he would have asked those kind of things, but it tells you who this person is.
There's one more person that deserves a lot of credit, and it's Brent Pry. And for what you can say about the tenure and what you can say about everything else, it obviously meant a lot to Coach Franklin to get whatever Coach Pry told him. Number one, must have been the truth. And number 2, must have been good enough for him to take the job. So I do want to tip my cap to Coach Pry. And I also want to tip my cap to people like you, people like Brad, people like Coach Foster and Witt. Like, obviously nobody wants to get fired ultimately. And I think the level of love and respect that he was given over the course of his tenure, obviously is what helps shape that answer. But did you get any insight into those conversations and how that unfolded?
I did. I called Brent about a week after. Well, first I texted him after it was over, and I said, hey, I'm sorry, and he says, okay, thank you, brother. He always says brother. And then I called him and I said, I got one question. And it was a week later before he called me back. He said, I apologize, Jay. I was just in a bad place, but I'm a little better now. What's your question? And I said, if we get James Franklin to come to Virginia Tech, would you consider working for him? And he said, Jay, I would follow James Franklin to Florida. I'd follow James Franklin to Auburn. Now, one place I'm not going is UCLA. To hell with that. I'm not going out there. I laughed, because Brent he's got a cool personality. I love him to death. We got to know him very, very well.
Yeah.
And then he goes, for James Franklin, Jay, I would consider coming back.
Yep.
I said, Coach, do you have one more time for one more question? He said, yes. What you got, Jay? And I said, look, I think James is asking for some time to regroup and breath of fresh air, but we don't have time. What do I do here? Do I take it easy? Do I keep the pressure on? What's your advice? He says, Jay, James Franklin is an avid recruiter. Therefore, he likes to be recruited.
Yep.
And I went, boop. I'm a salesman my whole life. Okay.
Yep.
And the easiest person to sell to is a salesman.
Yep.
You read any book, it's true.
Yep.
And I'm thinking, you know what? I'm going to recruit. And that's what I did. I recruited and recruited and recruited. And I would not let it go.
That is fascinating.
I guess that's the relentless story.
Yeah, no, for sure. Some rapid fire questions here for you. This one's totally off topic here, but if you could, I ask everybody, if you could have dinner with 4 people, dead or alive, who would they be, Jay?
Dead or alive?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay. I'm sorry. You caught me off guard there.
It's the hardest one by far. We needed to get this out of rapid fire.
I would love to have Donald Trump to just to talk to that guy. I've talked to someone that was his HHS secretary, and I said, does he really eat all that fast food? He goes, it'll make you sick how much he eats. And I says, does he ever, because the HHS secretary was Eli Lilly's CEO, and he's on one of our medical boards in our private equity fund. And I'm saying, does he really work that hard? He goes, Jay, he calls me at 6 a.m. He goes, I ain't got up at 6 a.m.
Yep.
So yeah, I'd love to just, do that. I tell you, one thing I really think about a lot is Ronald Reagan. I would like to, he's passed away, right? And I'd like to know a little bit about him. George Patton, I would like to learn more about George. And then when I think of Margaret Thatcher and what she had to go through with a socialist kind of country and move it more mainstream in England, I just respect the heck out of her. So there's four. I never thought about that till you hit me.
That's a solid list there. Fun fact for the listeners: my father actually played for the New Jersey Generals, who was owned by Donald Trump back in the day. So a fun fact, fun Billy Ray Mitchell family fact. Jay, what is the best yes and the best no of your career?
Okay. So my best yes is I got asked, "Hey Jay, find me another trailer company." And I said, "Okay, I will do it." And I had no plant, I had nothing. And so this buyer, I was selling him other products, and he goes, "Find me another trailer guy." And I said, "What if I do it?" So that would probably be the best yes. The best no is I bought a farm equipment company to sell to Tractor Supply along with my trailers, and I lost a bunch of money doing that, and I learned a lot of lessons. So that was probably, I should have said no to that. How about that?
Any unsung heroes from this coaching search that haven't been mentioned?
Boy, we mentioned them. I'm telling you. Dr. Danny White did a lot of stuff on the background.
Shout out.
Once we knew we were moving in the right direction. Governor Youngkin for taking those calls. He was quick. I texted him. He was on it within 30 minutes. I was really pleased. And he's the one that changed the board makeup too.
Yep.
And with appointing John Rakovich, I'll be the first one to tell you, I'm like, "You want John Rakovich? You know how he's already been the rector?" And he's like, "That's why I want him to do it again." So that was pretty cool.
I wasn't originally going to ask this, but I am now. Politics aside, Glenn Youngkin's reign as governor is over. We are now moving to Abigail Spanberger.
Yes.
Has there been any conversation or any plans put in place to make sure that the greatest interest of Virginia Tech and what you all have put into place continues with the transition of whoever the next governor is going to be?
I mean, it's in, and look, we don't know her, what she's doing. All I know is what she said on TV and debate. I donated to her campaign. I would like to be re-upped when my next 2.5 years come up, because I love the school and I love what I'm doing. But obviously she gets to appoint it. We'll have 3 or 4 board members fall off in June, and she gets to appoint those. So eventually she will have her board as years go by. And they can change it, right? Let's just God hope they don't. And I think I just don't know. I apologize. I can't answer that. I just know it'll take several years to flip the entire board to her appointees.
What I've really appreciated, and I hate how political the world has gotten, but I appreciate how well you all work together, regardless of the political background. I'm talking about the people that are on the board now and the gentlemen and the ladies that I've been able to meet from the previous board. Like, you can tell that every single person that's involved cares tremendously about the future of Virginia Tech. And I think for as long as the school is around, they are going to remember the pivotal 18 to 24 months that have occurred and we just watched unfold. So,
and I go back to John Rakovich on that. He made the decision, we're going to change. We're not going to keep doing what we're doing. And he's doing that with other things. We've got to comply to the laws. We can't just cover this stuff up. When the U.S. government is telling us all things, we depend on research dollars. President Sands didn't sign a letter 400 other presidents signed. He didn't do that.
Right.
Virginia Tech's still, right where it needs to be. We got great leadership.
Jay, what kind of pasta were they serving at the Franklin household? Was it good?
Yeah, spaghetti and meat sauce.
Was it some Chianti? Did you have some
nothing fancy? No. Well, after we sat down and started talking and got that lawyer thing out of the way, he opened up his liquor cabinet, and I had given him a bottle when he came to our house, a Weller 12, which is really good stuff. And so we all 4 had a drink of that, and that was it. She also had a Caesar salad, some French bread, garlic bread, and she had some Parmesan cheese for the spaghetti.
Man, I'm looking forward to it. I wish you put it in the contract for Fumi to open up a nice little restaurant right in downtown Blacksburg. Who says no? There's plenty of real estate. It would be fantastic. Would love to check it out. But Jay, I got to tell you, thank you so much.
Her daughter's going to the culinary. Her daughter's going to the Culinary Institute over in Charlotte. So she wants to open up a coffee. Yes. Wants to open up a bakery little shop there. So maybe in Blacksburg would be the place. It'd be great.
As a Charlotte resident, I will be the first in line whenever that bakery does open. I am looking forward to it. And I am so thankful for your time, so thankful for everything you've done for Virginia Tech. And on that personal touch, Jay, the next time we do this, if you're willing to sit down again, we will be sure to do this in person. We will get that done and have another conversation. But again, thank you so much for everything, and looking forward to the future of Virginia Tech. And thank you for being a part of it.
Thank you. Appreciate it.